Let's just kick it off, and as people keep trickling in. So, hey y'all, Happy New Year. So
Happy New
exciting.
Year.
I can't believe we are already through the first week of January. I don't know if you're anything like me. I already feel a little bit behind. Anthony, we're talking about what a crazy week it's been. So we definitely appreciate you taking the time today to show up for this. Um, we thought we were excited about last month's topic, the law, but today's RSVP numbers completely blew that one out of the water. So clearly, HR is a hot topic for this group. Some of it might even say it's the bane of our existence, right? It's the thing that makes you pull your hair out, which is why we are so lucky to have Anthony LaPolla with us today. Meeting Anthony last year was honestly one of the bright spots of my 2025. So if you haven't had the chance to meet him yet, I'm hoping he becomes a highlight of your 2026. Anthony is the co-founder and chief HR officer of our sister company, VetPay HCM. Some of you might also recognize him from Empower Business Strategies, that specific HR firm that he founded. He's got all the right letters behind his name that prove that he's legit. He's got the master's degree, the SHRM degree, or the SHRM certification, the CEO. But most importantly, he gets the HR challenges that we're facing every day. I'm going to stop talking so Anthony can get started. Anthony, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Megan. I'm going to start taking you around with me so you can just introduce
I can be your hype girl.
introduce me like that to everybody, even personal and professional side. So it's good to see everybody. I'm happy that that we have a good group this afternoon, this morning, depending on where you are across the country. But I'm super excited to be presenting on foundational HR things and stuff. And I think one of the main things that we want to focus on today are some of the do's and don'ts and what you should be looking for in your practices from an HR standpoint. So I did we do have the chat on the side here. So if you do have questions, feel free to just start typing away, and Megan will let me know. But also, I did save some time towards the end of our 1 hour just to kind of go over some questions, some high level things as well. If you are comfortable sharing any type of HR related issues or topics that you're seeing within your organization. So I'm going to share my screen. If you just give me one moment, hopefully Zoom works for us today and is confident. And when you can see my screen, if you could just let me know.
You're good.
Good, awesome, fantastic. All right, so I'm going to move everybody over here, and we'll go from there. Um, so HR 101. How many of you really truly love HR? If I had to take a guess and get a poll, not many. It's probably the bane of many, as to Megan said, many's existence in your clinics. And so, one of the things that, again, I really want to focus on today is just looking at some of the do's and don'ts and really helping build those strong teams and reducing some risk in your clinic. So, a couple things, the learning objective for today: understand the core HR functions within your veterinary practice. Understand compliance basics, some of the things that will keep Department of Labor and your state DOL out of your clinics from a day-to-day side. We're going to look at some strategies for recruitment and retention, those big words that we hear quite frequently in this space on really how do we recruit and retain and build the overall culture in your clinic. And then finally, we'll identify some tools and systems that could help make your HR a little easier and more effective for 2026 and beyond. So, why does HR matter in vet med? Well, yes, while we focus on caring for individuals, pets, and loved ones, really veterinary medicine is a people first industry. And so, what does that mean? That means that in order to have a successful hospital, you got to have a strong team behind you. And what does that team do? It ensures that your hospital's moving at an efficient rate, understanding your clients, being able to talk to your clients from a customer service standpoint, and then also from a doctor level, right? So, that it's important to have that in your clinic. Turnover and burnout, we hear it all the time. Turnover and burnout is at an all-time high in the veterinary industry. How do we navigate that? HR is important, or having somebody dedicated in that HR space to kind of mitigate some of the issues that might come up in your clinic before that burnout happens, or if you lose employees to another clinic or completely out of the industry as a whole. And then, HR really ensures structure, consistency, and then most importantly, that legal compliance. And our team here always says happy teams equal better patient care and overall client experience. We've done studies over the last year or so where we've taken 6 hospitals, 3 specialty, 3 GP, and really looked at the overall culture in the practice and in putting forward some culture changing strategies behind there, and we've seen a huge uptick in overall employee experience and employees being happier, as well as the overall client experience and the returning of clients once they're in your clinic. So, HR life cycle, we also call it the total rewards. You might have heard that in maybe some trainings that you've taken in your time as a veterinary professional. But when we look at the total HR life cycle, we're looking at it from recruitment and hiring. It's always the very first and foremost line, right? So, what does your recruitment look like? What does the hiring process look like? Ensuring that you're being competitive out in the market, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Onboarding and training, it's more than just filling out your required documents to get somebody in the hospital. It's truly an onboarding a plan and a truly a training plan that really should be put into place for your organization and in your clinic. Performance management, staying on top of performance management, whether it's um, semi-annually, annual performance management, however often you choose to do employee performance reviews. That's very important because it sets the tone of essentially where people are in the clinic and in their job function. Compensation and benefits. Compensation and benefits are always the two that are the hot topics. And when you're especially looking at recruitment and hiring, ensuring you're being competitive in that space, what compensation and benefits look like from a startup level to to a clinic that is established, um, long term, completely different. What you can afford, what you can't afford, but bringing in the right people as well. Employee relations tends to be the hardest of HR, the do's and the don'ts, what you can say, what you can't say, making sure that there's a neutral party navigating that HR for any type of employee relations issues. And then looking at compliance, HR compliance, and separation, whether it's voluntary or involuntary separation from an organization. We're going to want to look at all of that as well, especially during that whole HR life cycle. Any questions thus far? Awesome. All right, recruiting the right team. So we work with several clinics across the country, hundreds of clinics across the country. And one of the biggest things when we ask, all right, we're going to start recruiting, do you have a job description? I think so, or ha, you're funny. We don't have anything like that. So we need to make sure that we have correct, clear job descriptions in your clinic. It's important because it sets the tone not only for recruitment, but also for employees that are currently working in your practice. And you have to think about a job description as that guideline, right? And at least somebody understands what their day to day might look like or will be like working in your clinic. You want to highlight culture and purpose when you're recruiting the right team, when you're interviewing. It's not just about pay. What we're seeing in the market today is that compensation is coming in at number 3, PTO number 1, and benefits number 2. So what that means is that pay is yeah, it's important because you need to live, but we're seeing employees applying or potential employees, candidates applying to clinics because of remember the culture, whether you offer good benefits, or the work-life balance, especially in the generations coming up through vet med. Structuring interviews and using consistent scoring. So what I mean by that is that you want to have interview questions that are consistent for everybody, and you really want to try to maintain and stick to those questions so you give every candidate a fair opportunity to apply and to have a good interview process. Further, it'll help you as the owner or hiring manager really look at the overall right fit for your clinic. So ensuring structure, ensuring consistent scoring. We have a scoring metric that we use and recommend for all interviews as well. Use employment applications. I cannot tell you how important an employment application is, not just a resume. And the reason is two reasons. Um, if you have employees fill out employment applications, you can put language in there for if and when you run background screens or drug screenings for your clinics. It's a layer of protection because the candidate is signing off on, yep, this is me, this is who I am, and if you want to proceed and move forward with hiring me, I authorize for background and drug screens for the position. But because of our good friend ChatGPT and all AI out there, we're seeing more and more AI-based resumes come through. So, for example, we're seeing candidates taking your job posting that you're putting on Indeed, ZipRecruiter, LinkedIn, whatever it may be, and say, create me a CVT resume based on 5 years of experience and for this specific clinic. And it is scary how it will essentially fib work history, it'll fib on their qualifications. So, employment applications are important because even though you might have the resume, it's good to have them also fill out that same information because then you'll really be able to tell if it was truly their resume or if it was AI generated and they essentially lied about their expertise for your clinic. And then finally, avoid illegal interview questions. Please don't ask how old somebody is in an interview or if they're expecting children or anything along those lines when it comes to personal. I have sat in many lawsuits over interviews that have not been conducted correctly because of race, gender, sexual orientation, and it has actually closed some clinics that we've supported over the last 5 to 6 years because they asked illegal interview questions. Further, there are people that will apply to your clinic and look for this trouble. And it's a way for them to file lawsuits. It's a way for them to really upset the system. So make sure you have proper interview questions. Make sure you're not asking those illegal interview questions, and stay on the topic. Stay on what the job is and what you are hiring for. Any questions thus far? Okay. Onboarding that sticks. So when you are bringing somebody in, onboarding is more than just fill out your tax forms, your I-9, the employment application, whatever it may be. Okay. You want to set performance expectations early. And by setting performance expectations early, sets a clear stage of what's expected of the employee moving forward. And it's also important because the first 90 days are usually the most critical for retention. It's instead of bringing somebody on and just saying, okay, good luck, we'll see you in triage, or have fun at the front desk. This is what you have to do. These are our systems. Have a clear onboarding checklist and training manual, so to speak, or training checklist that an employee can follow over the course of 2 to 4 weeks. We also find that it's important to assign a mentor or a quote unquote buddy in your clinic. And we've seen huge successes when they've been paired up with somebody that's a really good teacher and somebody that's going to teach well. And so we really recommend when you're looking at a full onboarding side of the house in your clinic to really ensure that you have that buttoned up pretty well because, again, those first 90 days are the most critical. And if an employee doesn't feel welcomed or just kind of felt like that they're left out and left field, so to speak, it's not going to go well, and you'll end up losing that, and then you'll be back to square one on recruiting and retention as well.
Uh,
Finally, review. Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, I thought we were, I'm sorry. Question.
Yes.
Can we ask for pronouns on job applications?
Only if they want to disclose. So yes, you can put pronouns optional on the job applications, but I would ensure that you have optional in quotations or parentheses on that application. That way that they don't feel like that they have to when they're applying. Great question.
Okay, and then another follow-up real quick. Can the practice manager be the buddy, or does it need to be lay staff?
It it doesn't really matter as long as the practice manager is providing the correct training. But what I would say to that is sometimes, and sometimes, many times, the practice manager is pulled in 500 different directions throughout the day. So if you had somebody that's dedicated specifically to that position, it might be a little bit clearer. But again, every hospital is different, every size is different. And so as long as that there's somebody that they can call on or refer on, it's better than nothing. That's a great question.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And then finally, on the onboarding, policies, safety, and benefits. So um, we'll talk about policies and compliance in a minute, but it is important to review if you have a handbook in your clinic, if you have specific policies that employees sign off on those, and then fully understand what benefits that they're eligible for. And then safety. As we all know, OSHA is very important in our veterinary clinics. And so ensuring that they're getting the right training in the appropriate amount of time. What I like to recommend is that have all trainings completed within the first 30 days of being on the job, or before that they even go into specific areas such as surgery, triage, or even helping in the exam room. We want to ensure that they have the appropriate safety trainings and documented that those trainings took place. Compliance. Okay. So this is typically the most complicated part of HR. And this is where we get called on vet pay side to say, am I doing this correctly? Does this make sense? And so I really wanted to just highlight some of the areas that you really should keep up on. And because they are constantly changing and each state is different. So for example, we get a ton of questions on leave and what an employee is entitled to and what an employer is entitled to, or what an employer has to do for the employee. So FLSA, Fair Labor Standard Act, making sure that you are treating every employee fairly, both from a position side and a wage side. EEOC, Equal Opportunity Act as well, making sure that you're following all EEOC guidelines. Depending on the size of your clinics, ADA compliance, American Disabilities Act. So there's certain regulations for, and again, also based on state, but typically 50 and over employees versus 50 and under. Some states are 100 employees and over, and some states are 100 employees and under. So each one is state specific. And then FMLA, what is required and do you have to offer it based on the size of your organization? So a lot of these leaves and what's required under the federal guidelines, you really want to ensure that you're following those to a T, because employees have become smarter in a sense of researching and Googling and chat GPTing and what's required and what's not required. So you really want to be careful when it comes down to federal guidelines and laws. State laws, wage and hour, PTO, paid family leave if your state offers it, and sick leave if your state offers it. You need to ensure that you're following those state guidelines. I really want to focus on the wage and hour. There's many instances where we'll get called or asked about, well, I'm paying somebody a salary, but they're not at the salary threshold. And so they have, in order to be a salaried employee, there's a salary testing under the Fair Labor Standard Act that you have to ensure that you are following. So a lot of times we'll find that people might be misclassified or not being paid appropriately, and we readjust that and make sure that we get you in compliance that route. But I would always I'm a big proponent of doing it at least twice a year. You could do it once a year, but at least twice a year on a full audit of your wage and hours, ensuring that everybody is working the appropriate hours and being paid the appropriate amount for your state and federal guidelines. Paid time off, we get questions on this as well. Paid time off is an added benefit. It is typically, again, state specific, not required by law. What is required is that sick time. So I'm going to pick on good old New York State for a moment because California does it, New York typically does it. But state law for New York, if you are a New York clinic, let's say, and you have 100 employees and under, you have to offer at least 40 hours of sick time. 100 and over, you have to give 56 hours. So as long as those sick time leave laws are in place, you're in compliance. But PTO is an added benefit, and I think a lot of times it gets blurred on what's legal and what's not legal when it comes down to PTO hours for organizations. Required posters. Every federal and state typically requires posters in your clinic. We always recommend to post them in your break room, wherever is visible for your staff. And so ensuring that you're updating those on an annual basis. Most of the time, they roll out end of January, beginning of February. Sometimes we see it in March. It all depends on when the Department of Labor's finalize language and get them sent out for employers to post in their organization. But no matter where you have employees, whether you have a multi-location clinic or you have one location, you have to ensure that you have posters at every one of your locations wherever those employees are working. I saw something pop up, Megan. Is there a question?
Yes, do we have to separate PTO and sick time, or can it be one lump sum?
Nope, it can be one lump sum for PTO and sick as long as it's satisfying the sick law. So as long as you have that at least that amount of time, definitely you can put it in one bucket. We call it the one bucket system, and we're seeing more and more clinics and organizations go that route where they're dumping everything into one bucket. Great question. Employee files. Employee files. What to keep separate and what to keep together. So very easy. Typically, anything personnel related, so their tax forms, their I-9s, their application, any type of certificates that they get, go into their personnel file. Anything medical related should be separated out and into a separate folder. So if you were to get audited by the Department of Labor, they would come in and say, all right, let me look at Anthony's folder. Does he have a medical and personnel file? Well, he doesn't have anything medical. There's nothing to put in it. I know, but you still need to have a separate folder built out where it's available. So if I have to have a vaccination, if I'm going on leave, if I have a doctor's note, anything along those lines, you should keep those files separately. And so, again, even if there's no medical, you always want to, just to be on the safe side, have a separate folder for that employee. And typically, those folders are kept in a separate drawer that's specifically for medical, just to make sure we keep that separate. Um, yes,
Electronic records? How do we, are there, those are separate or those need different files or how does that work?
depending on how those electronic files are being stored. So if you're storing them on a OneDrive, on a share file, a Dropbox, whatever it may be, yes, you still have to keep those separate and you should have it separated in their electronic folder. If you're using an HRIS system, you can actually create in the document section of your HRIS or payroll system to separate those out. So yes, so if Department of Labor walked in and said, "Can we see your employee files?" and you pull up the OneDrive or whatever you're using, you should still have those separated. Great
The
question.
reason behind the separating, is it just red tape or is there a HIPAA?
They're great question. Call Department of Labor. I don't know. I think it's to keep things confidential. If for some reason somebody got into the files, uh, there's a lot of things we don't know why that the recommendations are why they're recommended, but it's been like this for quite some time.
Okay, then we're just going to keep you on your toes today, Anthony.
Yeah.
Insurance application, is that an employee file or is that a medical? document?
Great question. That is an employee file because it should be part of their onboarding or when open enrollment happens in your clinic. So all that can go right into their personnel file. Medical, remember, medical is leave, medical is vaccination records, medical is accommodations, all things related to someone's physical or mental well-being based on what their doctor has provided goes into that file.
Okay, can I keep the files at my house?
No.
Okay.
Files
Just
need to be
asking.
kept, that's okay. Files need to be kept on site because if you have Mr. or Mrs. DOL walk in, they're going to say, we need this file, this file, this file. And then you say, well, I got to run home and get it. That's not good. It needs to be readily available to the employees and to an audit if that happens at any time. Great question.
What about work related? We're just gonna keep going. This is great.
Love
This is
it.
obviously the hot topic. Work related files. So improvement plans, one-on-one meetings, hospital policies. Where do those live?
Personnel, all personnel files. So, yep, all personnel. Great question.
That's it
Uh,
for now.
Okay, I nines. I nines so an I nine, for anybody who doesn't know, an I nine is a work authorization, United States work authorization. By law, this is the one form that gets a lot of organizations, both in veterinary medicine and both in non-vet med, where I-9s are not completed at all or not filled out correctly. So, what I recommend is that when an employee starts, you have them complete the I-9. This should be done as soon as they get on site. You not necessarily have to use E-Verify, which is a free system through the government, but I recommend E-Verify because it what it does is you put the employee information into the government's website. It will automatically show if the employee is authorized to work in the United States, and you can actually print out with an authorization number. What I recommend is that you take that printout form from the E-Verify, staple it to the back of the I-9, and put it in a binder. I like having I-9s in binders, alpha in an alphabetical order, split between active employees and inactive employees. I know I just threw a lot out there. So active employees, inactive employees, and you need to keep them for at least 7 years. I like the binder route because, again, if Department of Labor was to walk in and they say, we need to see your I-9s, you're not opening up your filing cabinet for them to look at more. You are giving them the binder so they can look at the I-9s and review the I-9 audit. I'll stop there because I see a bunch of questions coming in.
We are made of questions. Okay,
Okay,
if we have multiple locations, do we need the paperwork at both spots?
if you have multiple, no, no, as long as wherever your headquarters is based at.
Okay.
Yep,
Uh, Workers' comp urgent care visit paperwork,
workers' comp,
which
medical file.
medical file?
Yep,
Okay. If the Department of Labor shows up, can we say, pull the OSHA card and be like, this is not a convenient time for me, come back later?
nope. Typically not. They'll ask to see your files immediately, and that's why they do unannounced visits because they're Department of Labor and they're walking in to make sure that you don't have the time to fix whatever you need to fix.
But we want to be prepared. So is there a checklist from the Department of Labor that we can download and make sure that we're good?
There is some not a checklist, so to speak. No, Department of Labor doesn't offer that. I have a checklist that I can send out to everybody for what's needed to be in compliance. Um, but Department of Labor, haha, very
We
funny.
would like we would like Anthony's
Okay.
checklist, please.
Okay.
And then the government website to verify is what?
e-verify.gov. Create your own account. You can, and it's very simple. Before you do that, though, double check with your payroll or HR software system if you have a software system, because a lot of the times it might be already included in it. So you don't want to. What happens is you'll get assigned a specific number for your clinic. You don't want to duplicate. So double check first, and then if they don't have that, then create it on the government website.
Okay, we are good at this exact moment.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Awesome. Love, love, love the questions. All right. Pay time and overtime rules. Not exempt equals hourly, overtime applies. Exempt equals salary, but needs to meet the salary duties and salary test. And that salary test is done um, through the Fair Labor Standard Act, FLSA. Okay. There's too much to go into that. So if it would be better for us to kind of get on a separate call when it comes to salary testing, just because there's so much that goes into that. But we really want to make sure that your employees are coded correctly when you're looking at hourly versus salaried employees. Working interviews, we get this all the time. Well, I had somebody shadow today and I didn't pay them. Okay, did you tell them you were going to pay them? Well, yes. Well, I don't understand. I decided I don't want them in my clinic and I'm not going to pay them. No, you have to pay them for the hours that they work. How do you pay? There's a threshold in $600, I believe it is. Anything over $600, and I'll go back to I'll look at the GP team just to confirm. But anything under $600, you can write a check. Anything over has to be labeled as a 1099. Can I have one of the GP teams just to confirm, please? Yes, I'm
You're
here. I'm
correct.
seeing head shake. So great, awesome. So if they're under $600, you can pay them how you want to pay them. Anything over $600, we have to have them fill out a W-9, and they would be classified as a 1099 contractor. Pay period and record keeping requirements. You want to ensure, especially for your financials, that you're recording appropriately for your record keeping as well as your pay periods. We see clinics pay bi-monthly, bi-weekly, some are weekly. Very rare do we see a monthly pay. Monthly is a little too long, unless if it's commission based. That's going down a whole rabbit hole. But usually it's biweekly or weekly that we'll see. And then common violations in the vet practices. I'm going to go back to step 1 and 2 here. It's usually the hourly versus salary. What qualifies, what doesn't qualify.
Does paying working interviews vary by state? Does everyone need to do it?
Um, Not necessarily. Well, yes, that's a trick question. Yes, yes, they should, because if that individual is doing something that's benefiting the organization, they should be compensated for doing that. There's a difference between a working interview and shadowing and an internship. And so it's all depends on how you classify that working interview. Um, California, yeah, cover yourself, you better be paying. New York, yeah, you better be paying. Some states are a little bit more lenient than others. I always say if you're classifying this as a working interview, pay the 4 hours, pay whatever you had them there, so at least you're covering yourself from any potential lawsuit or free labor. We don't want to go down that route either.
So I will follow up with a personal question.
Yep.
So we've had people that we did working interviews with, paid them, and then they filed for unemployment when they weren't hired. Is there verbiage to use to, I mean, it's right, they don't qualify, obviously, but it's
Right.
still a pain. Is there something that
Yeah.
we do to avoid that?
Yes, and you should have, even if it's a working interview, they should be signing off on a form that to understand that they're almost like a working interview offer letter to acknowledge that this is strictly a working interview to review your expertise, your experience, and you will be paid this amount for this amount of hours. And it does cover you that way, and you can put that it does not guarantee employment based on the working interview. For unemployment purposes, they have to work a certain amount of time to even get the unemployment. And typically, if they're working someplace else, it would go back on the previous employer. Um, but it's good to protect yourself and offer some type of an offer letter or something along those lines.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Good.
You're welcome. Thanks. Culture and retention. I laugh a lot when it comes to culture because um, every clinic we work with, our culture is bad. Well, I don't believe that entirely. I think that the culture is how you create it. And it's much more than, well, we offer pizza on Fridays. That's great and that's awesome. But what else are you doing? And so I love when I walk into a clinic and I see a recognition board. I think that's awesome. I think that if you're highlighting employees throughout the month, that's fantastic, whether it's a weekly thing. Um, but I want to really focus on raises. We hear that, well, in order for my staff to feel appreciated, I got to give them a raise. Or um, not necessarily. Raises should be tied to performance based. And some people would disagree with me, some people would agree. But when I look at raises and especially cost of doing business in the veterinary industry today, you really want to tie that raise to strong performance. You never want to just give raises because you want to make somebody happy. You shouldn't have to be put into that corner as a practice manager or an owner. So be careful on raises, really tie that back to performance management and get on a schedule where, you're doing your performance management, whether again, twice a year or yearly, and then get on a schedule for raises so you can at least budget them as well. We find that team meetings and huddles work really well. Take 3 minutes every morning or 3 minutes at the end of the day and just say, okay, what are our cases? What are we working on? How can we work together going forward? So, team meetings are important. It's also really important to provide constructive criticism and feedback on those positions or people in the organization because you never want things to fester. If someone's not doing something right, or if they're doing something really, really well, don't wait too long to tackle that. Try to have that feedback relatively quickly. Build career paths and CE continuing education opportunities for employees. Just having something for an employee to look at, say, okay, I'm starting here, but I really want to get here. How do I get to that point? Work with the owner, the practice manager, even a team lead on getting to the next level. It really does provide a good opportunity and really keeps retention as well for the employee. Address burnout again before it leads to turnover. The the average cost to a clinic for recruitment, and I'm not saying hiring a recruiting company or constantly recruiting for other positions, but every hire on average costs between $15,000 to $25,000, and that's because you're going out there either using a job board, you're taking the time for current staff to retrain, to really get up to speed on things in your clinic. So instead of wasting that money or spending that money, if there's burnout happening, look at those efficiencies, talk to the employees, and really try to come to a solution before it's too late. And then surveys, I like surveys. I think engagement through surveys is important, but also too, just sit down and talk to somebody, have a conversation. Don't be afraid to have a conversation. It's important and understand if there's any struggles, understand what drives them to come to work every day, and then really focus on that for long-term growth for your clinic. I see some questions.
A quick clarification back to paid working interviews.
Yep.
If they touch an animal, the understanding is if they touch an animal, they should get paid. Does that mean like CSR interviews don't, or have you heard of that rule?
I have not heard of that role.
Okay.
That's a first for me. So, yeah, I have a couple follow-up questions to that, but I have not heard of that. I think the bigger picture look is what are they doing with that animal? Are they restraining? Are they helping with nails? Are they, what are they doing in the clinic? If they're just petting somebody's animal, then no. But if they're actually doing something with the patient, yes, that's considered a working interview.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And then suggestions on conflict when one employee keeps having conflicts after check-ins multiple times. At what point do you decide that this isn't working?
All depends. Every situation is different. What I would say is document, document, document. And a lot of times we hear, well, our state is an at-will state, so we can just fire at any time. No, that's not what at-will means. At-will really pertains to a failing organization, an elimination of positions, things along those lines. It's not, well, I don't like you, get out, you're done, we're at will state. It I cannot stress enough the importance of documentation. We can actually go to our next slide, or I'll talk about it in a minute. But documentation is important. Employee relations is important. It really comes down to every situation is different. So I can't give a super clear answer on that, Megan. But what I can say is document the entire employee relations issue. Welcome. Handbooks. I wish I could take a poll, excuse me, on how many people actually have handbooks, and if you have a handbook, when the last time it was updated. Handbooks are so important in your clinic, and I think Anthony, Mann, is that correct, Megan? The employment attorney that was on a few
Diane.
months ago. Yep. He really stressed the importance of employee handbooks as well. Update your employee handbook every year. It should be done annually. And the reason being, even though things and stuff might not change dramatically um, year to year, it's important to update the language based on law, based on federal and state guidelines. This might come to surprise for some, but your handbook, again, state depending on your state, should go anywhere between 50 to 75 pages. And the reason being is because of all the laws that have come out in the updated language, on top of what you want to put into your handbook based on your clinic needs and what your offerings are and some of your policies that you put into place. Um, so handbooks, you should be updating those on an annual basis. Time of year, I like to see either the beginning of the year or towards the end of the year. But I think that now's the time to do it, and we want to make sure that you're getting those updated. Core policies, though, for every practice, make sure you have a code of conduct or the handbook. PTO attendance policies, what is set in stone, what isn't. We don't want any gray area when it comes to that, especially for those offenders in the attendance world and those that like to either show up late constantly or don't show up at all. So we want to make sure that we have those laid out. Anti-harassment policies. Every state is different when it comes to harassment trainings, but many require annual sexual harassment trainings. We want to make sure that those are updated on an annual basis. God forbid that there was a sexual harassment investigation in your clinic and a legal attorney said, hey, when's the last time you did a training? And you never did that. It could open up some doors for a lawsuit or for more legal issues. So we want to make sure we do that. Social media. Social media, as we all know, is huge today. Please, please, please make sure you have a social media policy and really to protect not only the clinic, but also your patients. We've had issues where employees are taking pictures of somebody's loved one in surgery or in triage, or, oh, how cool does this surgery look? And they're posting it all over social media. We need to make sure that we're really buttoning that up. Same goes for confidentiality. Whatever the patients may have or whatever might be happening in the clinic, we want to maintain that confidentiality for patient care, but also for employees and employee confidentiality, anything around medical confidentiality as well. And then safety and infection control. All hospitals should have OSHA guidelines, but we want to make sure that all your logs and the safety and infection control are up to date on an annual basis. Any questions thus far? Okay. Handling employee relations issues, jump the gun a little bit there, but address the issues early and again, document everything. Follow a progressive disciplinary action. So typical disciplinary action, written warning, excuse me, verbal, written warning, maybe a final warning, and then up to termination. We always want to ensure that your language is updated in your progressive disciplinary action forms. Everything should be done on a form. The employee and employer should be signing off on it. We get questions, well, what happens if Anthony's being miserable one day and doesn't want to sign off on the disciplinary action? You, as the employer, can put employee refused to sign, initial out the door. But at least you acknowledge and you had that conversation. Um, Train managers on communication and coaching, the do's and the don'ts, difficult conversations, very important. separate emotion from documentation. A lot of the times we'll get emotion in it. And what I mean by that is, yeah, you as a practice manager, an owner, a lead are so frustrated with this employee. Your natural emotion is going to come out into it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the emotions are. It matters. This is what the policy says. This is what was required from me as the employer and for the employee. And then sticking to that. That's what matters, not the emotion. And then on the bottom here, I put know when to call an HR partner or quote employment attorney. We hear all too often, well, I called my attorney and he or she provided this. And my follow-up question is, are they an employment attorney? No, they're the ones that helped us with the sale. Or no, they're more M&A, or they're not focused on employment. I'm not discrediting what your attorney might be knowledgeable in. What I am saying is not all attorneys are up to date on employment laws. So just be very cautious of that, especially when calling on an attorney for larger legal cases in the clinic.
Quick social media question. If we
Yep.
have on our new client form that the client can opt in or opt out of us sharing their pictures, do we need to ask them every time or is one permission enough?
On the client side, one
Client
permission is
side.
enough. Yeah. Well, once is enough. This is more focused on the employee side, and they should be signing off on a social media, AI, cell phone policy, which you can essentially lump into one policy for them to sign off on.
Okay, great.
Good question.
Going back a little bit to sexual harassment training.
Yep.
Does it need to be a different training every year, or can we watch the same videos over those 1980 videos that
Yes, you can watch the same videos. They satisfy, well, again, state specific. But yes, you can watch the same videos. What I will say about sexual harassment trainings is that most, if not all, have to be interactive. So what does that mean? That means you play the video, and you or whoever's administering it needs to be up in front of the room asking questions or addressing the questions with the staff. Now, if you have an HR system or a payroll system that has sexual harassment trainings in there and their learning management or whatever it may be, 90%, 95% of the time, those are interactive because you can't click through them very quickly, and they make you stop and answer the question and then certify and electronically sign. So those will satisfy the required trainings based on the law.
Okay, do you have a favorite
A
sexual harassment
favorite
training?
a sexual harassment training?
Yeah.
um, no, I don't. I think they're all pretty boring, to be honest with you. I mean, they're all nasty. It's
Maybe
and,
this is the
and
next
it's
year's project, right? It has to have a fun and
Yeah,
jazzed
I
up.
mean, you could try as hard as possible to make them as fun and as exciting, but also too, um, again, each state is different, so you have to make sure you're following those state guidelines when administering them. I can tell you confidently, New York, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Florida, California, boring as all hell, but we
Okay.
do them.
Somebody recommended the AVA has one, and then if it's not
Yes.
necessarily interactive or like the click through, can we give them a test at the beginning or the end, and then that counts?
Say that once again, Megan. So if it's not interactive.
If we give them like a handbook or something, if it's not something that's clicking per
No,
time.
the reason for interactive is so that you're physically seeing them take the video or watch the video and take the exam.
Okay, but we
Yeah.
could just give them a test at the end of the training, and that would count.
Yes. Yeah. As
Okay.
long, as long as you're witnessing that Anthony is watching the video and doing it right then and there. Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Yep. Anything else?
Not at this exact moment.
Okay. HR systems and tools. So there are a ton of tools out there and a ton of different software systems. Here at VetPay HCM, we really focus on Paylocity. Paylocity has been awesome to work with for some of our clinics, but there are several tools out there. I would really suggest don't write paper checks anymore, and really kind of get into the 2026 with some type of of payroll or HR system. It makes the world of difference. There's a lot of leg up and work to do on the front end, but once you get it established and get all your employees working on it, it really does help with efficiency from a practice management side. Some PIMS systems offer, I have not heard of anything good or bad regarding the payroll and or timekeeping. But I do know that those are into effect. But when in doubt, either give us a call, let us talk you through that, or we can help navigate a system that's right for your clinic. But I really can't stress enough on the HR tools and systems, performance training and platforms. Again, a lot of those are built in. Timekeeping, punching in, punching out. Yes, we've heard the horror stories of someone clocking in for their shift at Dunkin' Donuts because they have access to an app on their phone. We want to make sure that it's truly tied to an IP address or stop that completely. We don't want any time theft happening. Document management and digital files typically happens within these systems and tools. And then benefit administration and onboarding systems. Ask your broker if you're working with a health insurance broker or a retirement broker about systems like Employee Navigator. There are, we hear Fidelity and Voya and Principal and all those fun stuff, but make your life easier. Take some time and invest in it this year because it'll really help you guys long term. Any questions there? Okay. Cost of getting HR wrong. Um, Fines, lawsuits, turnover costs, like I mentioned, lost culture and morale just when someone's getting up to speed or getting really welcomed into the clinic, they leave for a better job. Reputation damage, we hear it. Well, I don't understand. I can't find good work. I can't find good help. I can't find somebody who really wants to come in. Well, it's because it's out there in the community that your hospital has constant turnover. And so one of your biggest recruitment um, incentives or helps is your own employees. You want your employees out there talking positively about your organization and your clinic. So reputation damage is important to really try to mitigate. And then the reward, strong systems equal scalable growth. If you have a good process and HR foundation in your clinic, it will help tremendously for growth for your organization and really looking at keeping employees happy long term. Again, 30-day action plan for you. So conduct an audit, handbook audit employee files and pay classifications. Really important to do that. Looking at a structured onboarding plan like we talked about today. Train your managers on that documentation. Very important. And then schedule regular check-ins for HR support. Whether you have an HR person, whether you need an HR person, whether your HR person is your practice manager, constantly have check-ins from a manager owner or lead side. It's so important to constantly follow up on all of these things. And again, once this audit is complete, you're always going to want to continue to have continuous audits, especially of your employee files and your pay classifications. But when it comes to your handbook, when it comes to your onboarding, you really can get that set and in a good place for long-term growth. Any questions there? Okay, key takeaways. Strong HR just isn't compliance. It truly is the foundation of your practice success. So having a good partner in this space, having somebody who understands HR in and out, specifically veterinary medicine, because we are such a niche market, it really is important to have somebody who understands that and really will help provide some guidance long term for you. I really appreciate the time today. Any questions, anything that I can address before 4 minutes? How
Four
about that?
minutes. What if someone refuses to sign the employee handbook?
You can put employee refused to sign and put it into their file, and then if and when employee relations issues happen, it I don't want to say it makes it easier for termination, but we can have better ground on, hey, you didn't acknowledge it, and that's okay, but we documented, and Anthony didn't sign the employee handbook, my initials of the manager and date.
Okay. Someone mentioned geofencing, so make sure that your geofencing's turned on for
That's right.
payroll clock in and clock out. And then some states have their own sexual harassment videos. that you
Yes.
can use.
Yep. Correct. Yeah.
Um,
So each state is different.
recommending signing a new agreement every time you update a handbook?
Absolutely. They should be acknowledging every time that you either make an amendment or a new handbook acknowledging of the updated version. Because what you don't want is, well, I had an employee start in 2023, I updated it in 2026, things have changed. They're still following the 2023 handbook. You want them to follow the 26 and acknowledge that. Yep.
Perfect. Geofencing is like I have to be close enough to a certain IP address or computer to be able to
Yes,
clock in or
yep,
out,
that's
right?
correct. True geofencing is typically tied to your hospital's IP address. So we want to make sure I mean, that it's tied to your IP address. We don't want just geofencing with like a sketch on a map of your clinic. We want it really tied to your IP.
Perfect. Do you have to give people a hard copy of a new handbook every time?
No, it just has to be readily available to them for them to review and be able to ask questions. I usually like to have one hard copy in the clinic in a binder and then send it to them via PDF to their email address.
My takeaway from today is Anthony likes binders.
That is also true because I try to be organized.
I love it. I feel I am so happy that we were so interactive, guys. I love that for us. I love that for Anthony. Um, awesome
Love
as
the
always.
questions.
That's what I got for now, right? Yeah, just a bunch of thank yous. We're all very thankful for this.
Appreciate you guys very much, and by all means, reach out if you have any additional questions.
I will say a reminder that today's presentation will be shared to our Granite Peak YouTube channel. So if you want to share this with somebody else, if you need to go back and take notes, it'll be there shortly. Next month is Shelley Johnson. She's a CVPM. She's going to dive into navigating today's veterinary leadership landscape. That's a mouthful. I'm sure that will be exciting as well. Um, if you miss us in between now and next month, we are going to be at VMX next week. There's going to be a group of us going. There is the Facebook page that you are all welcome to join, and the Veterinary Lodger podcast that you can either listen to or be on if anyone would like to join us as a guest. So, fantastic to see so many faces today. Love the questions. Anthony, you're fantastic. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much.
See ya.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.